How does it sound? Okay. Good. So this is just an extra challenge, just in the last sort of minute, where you can practice connecting with the actual software we're going to be using, and also in terms of really the content of today. We're talking about social protection and rural poverty, and so yeah, use the draw function. You'll see it right up at the top there, the draw function, and you'll see when you press that, well, it's all activated actually. On the left-hand side, you have use the text button, or there's a draw button. So if you just want to put your comments there, what is the first thing that comes into mind when we say rural poverty? Please feel free to put your comments or your thoughts or your pictures there. I like this. The artist, who's the artist coming there? Tears. Is that tears? Yeah. Feel free, all of you, to contribute. I think there's a family coming along here. Yeah. Hungry and sad kids and families. Yes. Yeah. It's really real. Okay. And on that note, I am going to make an official welcome to this very important FAO social protection webinar. I'm Penelope Maver, and alongside my colleague Chiara will be facilitating today. As mentioned, I will I will put the webcam down so we can have connectivity. There's 23 participants in total, but of course not all of you and not all have been able to connect. But we'll make a start, because it's important that we start. We've only got a limited time. You're busy people, and we want to make the most of this 2 hours. So, Mahava, benvenuti, welcome. I imagine that you had celebrated well, Eid al-Fitr, and at the back of Ramadan. So I can imagine that you're really present and really wanting to be here, and it's going to be an important program. And so I'm going to just do a quick reminder, just this quiet background, the mute, raise your hand, just there. And the team behind and in front of you today, so there's a team from the FAO, the online protection team called socialprotection.org. We've been using their platform. And there's also Impact, who we are the learning and development in terms of helping this happen and make it as experiential as possible. And I know that many of you did submit your photos, and because not everybody did, we're not going to do that today. Maybe we'll wait till everybody in webinar 2. But I want to say, in terms of the team, the team of us, and also the participants, we have a contact list on the socialprotection.org, because it's important that you do have each other's contact details, and a big part of this program is creating the network that in terms of really making a difference in social protection in the Nino region. So we want you to get connected, and we want to use the opportunity of this webinar to help you get to know each other. In terms of today's agenda, we'll do a welcome. We'll ask you to do short presentations. We'll give Natalia Markoa here from FAO HQ to give a social protection overview, and we'll illustrate it with Fabio Veras on Brazil as a case study. And in terms of particularly the objectives of this session is to provide program context and why it matters. Alfredo and Flavia, who are leading this, will introduce you to the program and do the formal welcome. As I said, about getting to know each other and building a community, clarifying learning objectives and expected outcomes. Flavia will talk about that. Chiara will talk about how we will work together and the learning tools in the program. And like I was saying, Natalia and Marco will define what social protection means and explore it in a real case study with Fabio. And then we'll do the outline, the next task to build your understanding. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Alfredo to give the official institutional welcome. Alfredo.
Thank you very much, Penelope. And yes, I would like to welcome all the participants that have been able to connect today, hoping that the remaining people that didn't succeed today will be joining us next time. Let me start saying that the regional initiative on small-scale family farming in the Near East and North Africa felt the need of having such type of training in the region, and as far as I know, probably it's the first time ever that FAO is doing such exercise in the Near East and North Africa. We felt the need because traveling across the region, we felt that social protection, especially in rural areas and for farmers, was neglected. And we believe that is one of the major tools that can be used in any strategy for rural poverty reduction. And that's, I would say, that this is the main and the first message that I want to send across to all the participants, and to think about that. Why that? Because the world is suffering for poverty and undernourishment. And maybe Erika can just present the first thought where you can try to guess what are the present data available in the world. And also because we know by several studies conducted in the region and around the world that the smallholders, small fishers, small producers in general, are the ones that are producing the majority of the food and could be really the source of food security worldwide. Yes, probably these are the thoughts that are just now on your screen, and you can try to guess, to vote, where we stand and how we stand worldwide. Having said that, we also felt that as a FAO and as a regional office and as a regional initiative, that engaging in this type of trainings together with the technical division, supported by the technical division headquartered, also with the qualified organizations that are able to organize such e-learnings, could be one of the starting points for familiarizing on social protection in agriculture, as well as on poverty reduction methods and methodology to be used. We have to create resilient livelihoods in our region. We know that productivity is no longer sufficient to provide decent livelihoods for the most vulnerable people, but we have to look after also the very important social components, including also social protection mechanisms, employment opportunities, and also how to empower the future generations to be able to sustainably produce food in the region, as well as also empower women has a very important role in the society. Having said that, I think that we have to look now what are the major constraints for farmers in relationship to reduce poverty and concern to access to social systems in the region. Probably, having said that, you might be able to write up something and to give us your opinion. Either, I think in writing we can do that. You can just write your notes and then we can share it. Or even maybe interacting orally with us, just having an active intervention. And the way you prefer are both welcome. So having, maybe you already responded to the first pod. If you did so, I'm not sure if you can already show the results of that. And meanwhile, we might also try to see what you're thinking about the major constraints that are facing farmers in the region.
No answer has arrived yet. Alfredo, we can launch it again if you want to.
Yes, please do. I hope the participants are familiar in just completing the spots. I mean, simply they have to stick where they believe is the right number concerning the poverty and the nourishment. There was a second part also that maybe we can put on the screen concerning the food production by smallholders. So what is the contribution of food security?
Yes.
We can put both forward at the same time so that we can launch at the same time and the participant can just, yes, thanks. They can just give their answer.
Yes, now this is visible.
Yes, it is. So this is very good. We have tried to be active, dear participants. We try to have this very interactive way of learning, which is, I think, for some of you is the first time, but you will see that it's very useful and it's very challenging, but at the same time you can meet virtually a lot of colleagues and friends. Okay, you can start filling also the question. What are the major constraints faced by farmers? You can talk about your own country, which is very good. We can give 1 or 2 minutes. Meanwhile, if you want, I can keep talking. So while you give us some answer,
people are responding.
What we can say, they're responding, very good, okay. So maybe we can show some of the responses? Or we want to go first to see the results? Okay, let's go to the answers. Okay, we can see funding. Yeah, funding is good, is important, but funding what? We're talking about innovation technologies to improve productivity, or funding social mechanisms to support the communities, farmers and their families. Wow. Contribution less than 20%. Interesting, this one.
So now you're having all the polls all together. Sorry, it might be a bit confusing at the time, at this time, but now you can see everything together.
Okay, there is no vote concerning the contribution of small scale. Okay, it's coming. Very good. We wait. Interesting. I like that. Very good. Okay. There is probably there will be some reference documents that we can send around to the participants, where probably they can also find some of the results of these two questions that we raised. Actually, we have around 800 million people suffering extreme poverty around the world, and a similar number are undernourished. So the situation is quite dramatic, improved from the past, but still far from what we would like to see as people working on the United Nations and also country level. So the right question is 751, 900 million as a first question. Concerning the contribution of small-scale agriculture, in particular small-scale family farmers, they are contributing to 80% of the food produced. Yes, it looks extremely interesting, these figures. And even if they hold not much land in size, but they are really producing the food, and they are one that are the major actor in providing food security at community level, and particularly in marginal areas. Because in marginal areas we have no access to malls or to big farmers or something like this, like you can imagine in the big metropolis or living in urban areas. So they have to produce their own food most of the time, for their self-sufficiency and selling the surplus that they obtain. So here also their contribution to food security is very high, and only 30% of you have been able to guess the right question. Now if we go, because we are running short of time, what are the major constraints faced by farmers? Yes, access to market. Access to market is true, is one of the major constraints, but is in a way also a result of the problem, the fact that farmers sometimes are not even able to produce what is requested by the farmers, is sometimes due to the fact that the markets are far away from the production area. And this is one of the major issues. That's why also we as a regional initiative, we work on the value chain, which at the end of the day also we are able to see where the production is going to be sold. So we look at the entire cycle from, we used to say, from the farm to the fork. Access to market is the major constraint for smallholders in particular, because they cannot also guarantee quantity and quality in time. So their access is very limited, and they have problems with transportation sometimes, so they have to be limited to the local market. Limited resources, that's another major problem. When we talk about resources, it's also we're talking about capital. Also, we are talking about land and water, so natural resources. And climate change has an extremely strong effect. In fact, you have to say that in our region is the most affected region worldwide for climate change. Economic pressure is an issue, but also capital availability by the smallholders is a big issue too. Funding we have mentioned. Now we have to say that also probably some of your answers are repeated, but I see that here probably the social protection, I think, is something that we have to look very carefully in where, if we want to improve the livelihood of communities. As I said before, we have to look also at this important component in when we develop any strategy. And social protection is very low and very uneven in the NINA region. And in fact, the majority of the population, that in particular in rural areas, are not reached by any social protection mechanism. And that is something that we as FAO, we have to look very carefully and try to sustain the national programs, as well as to be able to reach the most vulnerable people. I think, having said that, I would like to thank you for this first interaction activity that we have together. I hope this interactivity will continue, and we will be getting stronger and stronger. You can benefit from these e-learning sessions that we will be having with you in the next couple of months through different sessions. So I thank you all, and I'm very happy and very pleased that you are able to participate with us to this first e-learning on social protection to reduce rural poverty in the NINA region. Thank you very much. Having said that, I think I give the floor to Flavia to continue with the next session, or maybe Penelope can be the interface between me and Flavia. Thank you very much again. Enjoy the training.
Hello.
Thanks,
can you all hear me? Oh, sorry to speak along with you, Penelope. It's Flavia. I think it's you're going to talk now. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to transit to you, and Alfredo has presented and just reinforced that you've got the expertise in this, and we want to draw out your knowledge. So the more interactive we are, the better. And all those themes will be explored as we go along the program. And I'm going to pass over to Flavia around the specific outcomes we're expecting from this learning. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I almost said good evening, but that didn't happen. Just to kind of place you on the program outcomes for the whole series of webinars. Since this is the first one, I understand it could be a bit confusing, but I'm pretty sure things are going to fall in place. It's always like this with trainings in general, and more specifically with e-learnings. So the program outcomes that we want today, of course, I know that all of you are practitioners in either social protection, social programs, or rural development programs. So we want mostly to get your expertise, as Penelope was saying, but not only that, but we also want to foster synergies between rural development and social protection. We want to see what is your opinion on how are your views on those synergies. We want to show how FAO is approaching the synergies. And then eventually we might be able to identify relevant and realistic windows of opportunities at national and regional levels. Can you please pass the next one? The next slide. Thank you. No, the one before. Yes. I just wanted to show you the learning journey of all the webinars. We're going to have 5 in total, and you have the schedules. If you didn't receive the schedules, please contact me, and we'll be happy to send it to you. The first webinar is just a contextual one, the ones that you're doing today, and defining social protection in a rural poverty context. The next one we're going to do, it's going to be a little bit more specific on challenges and best practice of social protection in the NINA region. So this is it's going to be perhaps very interesting to the rural development colleagues, because it's a little bit more concentrated in the challenges that we have currently in the Near East and Near East region in social protection. The third one, it is going to be a lot more detailed and not only theoretical. We're going to talk about the coordinated design and implementation of social policies and programs. Finally, on 4, this is very important. I'm sure you're all wondering how to fund social protection programs, and especially the ones that are envisioning the rural areas, not only the rural areas, but of course incorporating it. So we're going to have some good talks about different ways to finance. And then finally, a topic that we received a lot of feedback from the workshop that we did in Beirut last March. It is the interactions between social protection and resilience building. And just the last thing that I want to say, we have a Twitter. I'm not sure if you all use Twitter, but if you do, you're more than welcome to share your thoughts and learning with us as well through Twitter. Now, of course, you can always come to me on one of the organizers with your opinions, but if you want to use Twitter, this is the address that you can write down. Thank you very much, and I think I'm going to pass to Penelope now.
Chiara is going to take us through the methodology and how we're going to work with each other. Over to you, Chiara.
Yes. Hello, everybody. You might have heard me before talking to Alfredo. I'm here co-facilitating this session with Penelope, and you will see how we will do that just later on. As Penelope has already said and highlighted, and as Alfredo also anticipated, these webinars will be really drawing on your experience. That means that we will leverage on what you already know and what you are expert of. This also means that we need you. So these moments will be very interactive and will be based on a method that we call experiential, that is involving adult learners within a very specific cycle of actions that enable learning. And this, first of all, starts with a direct encounter, so a first-hand experience, and we will do that in many ways. We started with a poll, for example, so having your say, reflecting on what you have done, acted, or said, drawing up everything with some bits of theoretical knowledge and what FAO has learned so far around social protection. So we will also give you hints and theoretical and more modelist bites for everything that we will say, so trying to frame everything in a more structured way. And we will also work on your skills. And the entire process that Flavia has just shown aims to that, to really building skills for social protection. To translate into something that we will do, these 5 webinars will be full of experiential activities, moments for reflections and feedback, theory and real-world insights, skill practice, individual learning activities, e-journal in which we will collect everything that we will go through during the webinars, and action planning. So this is how we're going to work, and this means that we really rely upon your interaction and your contribution to make these 5 moments of encounter really, really fruitful and effective. And I'll hand it back to you, Penny.
Yeah, thanks, Chiara. It is a real challenge learning anyway. You know, it's to concentrate in 2 hours in front of a computer in this way is going to be hard. As adults, we're distracted anyway. I think the research is that our average attention span is 5.8 seconds or something, less than a goldfish. So we have to just try and concentrate as much as possible, and to get the most out of it. So I am going to pass it over to you. It is time for the self-presentations part of the agenda. So what we'd like you to do, there were 23 of you, but we haven't got 23 at this moment, but the challenge is to introduce yourselves in under 20 seconds. So we would like your name, your role, where you are, and an image, a metaphor, or a symbol that represents social protection for you. Now, the idea is that you will either verbally say it, so unmute your microphone and introduce yourself in under 20 seconds, or you may use the chat, or we've even got space if you want to use the draw function. So I'm going to hand it over to you, but it's just really the short, sharp introductions. As I mentioned before, thank you for those who sent the photos in. We were going to use them at this point, but because not everybody has, we'll use that another time. But we'll put that on the socialprotection.org and the platform, and you'll get to know each other and match the person with the photos. So over to you. Who's going to go first? Who's going to be the bravest to go first?
Hello.
Go. Yeah. No?
My name is Wadia Twaini. I'm the project manager of the social safety program in Lebanon. It's the NPTP, or the National Poverty Targeting Program.
Welcome. And your image, a metaphor or a symbol, Wadia, that comes to mind?
Since it's about social protection, I imagine two hands protecting something very precious.
Like cupping them or yeah, okay. Or something like that, yeah? Two hands. Nice. Zara. And
Hi.
thank you for going first. Zara.
Well, my name is Zara. I am from Egypt. I serve in FAO Egypt office in Cairo. And I am in touch with this, let's say, social protection in terms of managing a project aiming to improve nutrition and food security by targeting women and youth. While thinking in social protection, the first image come to my mind is a big umbrella.
Yeah, that's my one, Zara, too. I think of the umbrella. Nice, yes. Thank you. Well, welcome. And a big umbrella, not just any umbrella, a big umbrella. Love it. Okay, thank you. So who's next? Oh, who's put precious? Who is that?
Hello.
Hello. You sound like you're in the middle of a very busy city.
Yes,
Hello.
my name is Raid Hamza.
Yeah. Hi.
You hear me?
Hi, Raid. Yes, right. Yeah.
Hi. Yes, I'm a director of the National Agriculture Policy Center from Syria. We are focusing on rural development like poverty, migration, food security, and so far this topic is very important and interesting for us. The image that I thought is for referring to the protection is a mother that holding or his son.
Mother holding.
Her son.
Yeah, very powerful. Thanks, Abe. Yeah, thank you. Great. Thank you, thank you. Who's next? Who put precious? Somebody's put precious. Oh no, oh yeah, no, sorry. That was Wahid. That's actually yours, isn't it? Yeah. Continuation. Okay, who's next? Maram. Maram? 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 Who's there? Maram? Were you going to say something? Please go ahead. Maybe I'll ask you one by one. Amal, are you able to introduce yourself, please? Hello, I'm not to use the chat function as my microphone, so I'm the head of economic. Okay, Amal, what is your image, Amal? Just type it in. Welcome. Just type it in. Here we go. A roof. Wonderful. Yes, I love it. Yeah, very creative lot. Okay. Atusa, can you introduce yourself, please? Atusa, are you there? Fatima? Lena, you joined so early. What's your image?
Yes, thank you for calling me. I would like to introduce myself. Are you listening me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Yes, I want to introduce myself. I am Lina Faki from Ministry of Social Affairs. I am the project manager of the nutrition program in the ministry, working in this field for now 37 years.
Wow.
And forward for this nice experience of the webinar. And actually, I don't have an image now for the social protection. I will be providing you one at the end of the session.
But intuitively, you've got lots of experience. What's the one that just sort of, when you just springs to mind?
maybe a family, a father, a mother, and a child. The father is working on the land, the child is carrying a book, and the mother is working maybe in a center, health center. So this education, health, and land together to keep them in their rural area. We need education,
Great,
we
Lena.
need to give them health insurance, and we need to give them good help for agriculture.
Yes, that's a powerful combination. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you. See you, yeah, hear from you soon. Now, we've got
Thank
a
you.
lovely sailing boat. Thank you, Lena. A sailing boat that keeps you afloat and allows you to reach safely the shore. Well, as a New Zealander, as we've just won the America's Cup, I love that analogy. So who did the sailing boat? Is that Tommaso? Did you write that? Who wrote that?
That was me. Hello,
Tommaso,
can
did
you hear
write
me?
that? Yes.
Good. Hi, I'm Tommaso. I am the policy officer within the Food and Nutrition Security Impact Resilience Sustainability and Transformation, that would stand for FIRST program in West Bank and Gaza Strip. And yes, that is the image that comes to my mind. I mean, one of the many. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Tommaso. Welcome aboard. Great. So, Marjan. Marjan? Iran? Are you there? Okay, nobody. Everyone's a bit side. Tamir? Or Nada? Who would like to go? Who would like to introduce themselves? Nada? Are you there? Just even use the chat if you need to use the chat, if you haven't got a microphone. Okay. Well, I might, if nobody else, we'll move on, because you'll get an opportunity to meet each other as we get familiar with this technology and way of learning. And also, just as you share experiences, because once again, you've got a wealth of experience and very powerful metaphors around that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hand you over to Natalia, who's the Senior Social Protection Officer at FAO headquarters, and she's going to go into the part of where we're going to really explore what is social protection and get a really nuanced understanding of that. So over to you, Natalia.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I was speaking in my muted phone. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, you can hear me fine.
Natalia.
Yes, yes. Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, very, very happy to be here to contribute and participate to this very important first webinar. I think in the time that I have slotted, because this is the first introductory webinar, it was definitely important to introduce our colleagues and participants to the concept of social protection. How does FAO views it? What is the definition that we're using? What are the different instruments that we are supporting? And of course, how is that relevant to the Near East and Northern Africa region? So I think just to start, for us, social protection has become a key corporate strategy, is an important pillar of our work around reducing rural poverty. In the new framework that FAO is working on, rural poverty is one of the key elements, and of course social protection is considered one important component to achieve sustainable rural development and reaching zero hunger and eradicating poverty. So it's FAO's contribution to SDG 1.3, and of course trying to bring also closer synergies between this, SDG 1 and 2. The other, I think, message there is that we see social protection in three dimensions. No? And at a minimum, as a risk management tool, helping especially the poor and the vulnerable to help to better cope with emerging risk, to manage shocks, to manage unexpected issues that happen both at their household levels, like for example the loss of a family member, the loss of employment, but also at the macro level, shocks that could be linked with climate-related shocks, conflict, or others. We of course see it as a strategy that will help families to access basic social and economic services, access to health, access to education. But I think at the core of FAO's work and where we are definitely putting most of our efforts and contribution is on the economic impact and the economic potential of social protection. And I think our starting point is, and very much linked to what Alfredo was saying at the beginning, we know that it's the small producers, the small rural farmers, the ones that are contributing probably most to world food production, but at the same time are experiencing a wide range of vulnerabilities and barriers, therefore we need to find a way to enhance that economic and productive potential, and social protection is one of those instruments. And even though we believe it's key and important, it's still the coverage of most social protection programs is very low. I don't know if we are showing the slide with the key messages. I think it's there. Thank you. And I think that even though we know that the poorest and the most vulnerable are in the rural areas, and most of them rely on agriculture and natural resource management, a vast majority, around 70%, do not have access to social protection globally. And I think that the figures even is around the same in the NINA region. So we have a very strong commitment to raise awareness of the particular vulnerabilities those living in the rural areas face, and that's an FAO commitment, and helping different partners and different governments to enhance the economic potential of the poor, and trying to make sure that social protection programs effectively reach and cover the rural populations, both the rural poor, but also those that are vulnerable to poverty. I think for this first slide, I'll stop here. I think we have a video that will go next that will provide you an overview of how we see social protection. I think it's a very short video, and then we'll go in a little more in depth into the actual definition and scope of social protection.
Great, Natalia. Yes, you see there's a web link coming up, and what you'll do is you'll click on it and it will take you to YouTube. Now, it doesn't matter where you are, what country you are, YouTube will upload it at its right pace. So we'll wait. It's about a 3-minute video, and we'll wait till everybody has watched it. Okay. Thank you.
Do we open it to you? Penelope, so what do we do now? We wait until the video plays itself, no?
Talia, yes.
Social protection has helped lift millions of people out of extreme poverty. However, 70% of the world's population, particularly in rural areas, still lack social protection
key ingredient in any strategy for
Great. So I'm going to pass over to Natalia to draw it all together in terms of the social protection holistic approach.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Penelope. Well, in putting aside the awful models in the video, I hope you were able to grasp the key messages that we were trying to put forward. The one in terms of the economic and impact that social protection programs as a social intervention can generate, the importance of scaling up those programs and the importance of long-term investment, because these are processes that take, of course, time to build and to consolidate. But I think also the end message that Ben presented around, that they're not the silver bullet. That they're definitely a key component on reducing rural poverty. But we need to do more in order to maximize the impact that we're trying to see. And I think that's the core part of what Marco will be presenting afterwards, talking about the importance of complementary interventions and seeking coherence between social protection and agricultural interventions. But let me go back to the basics, because it's important that we all are on the same page in terms of definitions. To be very frank with all of you, it took a lot of time to reach consensus between the different agencies working on social protection on a definition. So we have an interagency board that gathers the key actors in social protection, and I think we all agree that we're talking about policies and programs that are aiming to prevent as well as to protect people against poverty, vulnerability, and social exclusion, right? But I think more than memorizing a definition, it's important to, I think, have in mind that we're talking about three big pillars of interventions. One around social assistance programs, so programs that are publicly provided, that are mainly things like cash transfers, in-kind transfers, conditional cash transfers, public works that do not require any contribution but are usually targeted to the poor and trying to serve mainly a poverty reduction and a risk management role. The other pillar is all those that are more of a contributory nature. So usually within the labor market scope and regulation, for example, pensions, in health insurance, different types of interventions that you receive as part of a contributory scheme. And usually you have access to those when you are part of a formal employment mechanism. And that, I think, is important for us working in agriculture to have on our radar, because of the nature of the agriculture sector. Most of those populations that we want to serve, such as small-scale farmers, who don't have access to particularly contributory type programs. And then a third set of interventions around labor market programs, but labor market programs that are, again, trying to create an even base between those that are part of the labor market. So we're talking about unemployment benefits, minimum wage regulations, maternity and paternity leaves, etc. So it's not every single labor market policies, but those that are specifically focused around risk management and vulnerability. But even more important, again, in trying to understand and have very strict definitions around it, is the importance of seeing social protection not as a standalone policy, but something that should be very integrated in a systematic way in broader development policies, social development policies, economic development policies, and even in contexts such as the Middle East and Northern Africa, emergency resilience and humanitarian programs. We know for a fact that there are many programs that are designed as sectoral policies, such as health insurance, such as agriculture input subsidies, fee waivers for education, that are sectoral policies serving a specific sectoral function, but they can also serve as social protection because of their role of managing risk and protecting those beneficiaries from falling further into poverty. So I think the message of this particular slide is to trying to see social protection not as a silver bullet standalone intervention, but as a component of wider development perspective, but as a key one, looking at the specific needs, characteristics, and vulnerabilities of those populations that we're trying to make, in our case, much more productive and active in the rural labor market. Also, this slide is key to have, one second, just the last comment before the last one. Before this slide on coverage, this slide also brings into the discussion the importance of coherence and policy coordination between different sectors. So when we're talking about social protection, we're not talking about one ministry or one sector. We're talking about bringing together the different parts of the government or the structure that are working towards a social protection vision. So bringing the Ministry of Agriculture that is working on subsidy program, input subsidies, but also interested in ensuring that those farmers have access to basic social protection programs, those working in the health sector, understanding how to design a health insurance scheme to be able to better reach different populations. So and I think that is probably the most complicated part of a social protection systems approach or holistic approach about the governance and the coordination between different sectors. Now we can move to the next one. And I think as a last message from this introductory part of the work is that we are one of the key, I think, issues that we're trying to tackle in our work in FAO is around coverage. As you all may be familiar with, in the context of the SDGs, governments have pledged and committed to scale up social protection and ensure coverage to all. Unfortunately, we are not in a very good starting point. If you see the different level of coverage across regions, it's still very limited. And unfortunately, we don't have the numbers specifically for the rural areas, but the disparities, I think, sure to say that are even bigger when we're talking about coverage at the rural, thinking about the rural areas. Next, please. Given all this background information and understanding of the potential and the contribution of social protection, FAO started to work in this area some years ago with a very specific commitment of filling specific gaps and to contribute to areas where other actors were not necessarily engaging in or putting forth messages that were not as strong. The first one is around expansion of coverage, and particularly expansion to rural areas of both social assistance as well as contributory type programs. The other big message is around coherence and policy coordination. And again, the message that Dan said at the end of the video around not being the silver bullet and the importance of linkage with other interventions. And of course, for FAO's perspective, is linking them with the core areas of FAO's work around nutrition, food security, agriculture, and natural resource management. So we have a pillar of work around nutrition-sensitive social protection, helping countries to enhance the design of social protection programs to maximize nutrition outcomes. Another area of work seeking policy and operational coherence between social protection, agriculture, and natural resource management. And Marco will go into detail onto that particular area of work. And then a very important fourth area around the role that social protection plays in building resilience, particularly in fragile context of forced displacement, context of emergency and humanitarian stress. So these are the four areas of work, areas where we think we're contributing to the broader social protection global agenda, building a very strong evidence base around scaling up social protection, as well as the added value of seeking synergies between social protection and other sectors. And I'll stop here and give the floor to.
So before Marco starts, I just wanted to check if there's any comments, or Marjan, you wanted to say something. Just wanted to give an opportunity to anybody who has a burning question or comment. Marjan, yeah, here you go. You're typing? No, it's okay now. The moment is lost, is it? Okay. So Marco, yes, over to you. And thank you, Natalia.
So hello everyone. I'm going to build, my part of the presentation is really going to build on what others have already said, what Natalia has just been saying, what Alfredo hinted at, and what was said in the video on the need for both agricultural and social protection policies and programs to work together in reducing poverty, hunger, and improving resilience. So I'll start off with a more theoretical explanation as to why this is needed. And then I'll move on to describing some of the evidence that we have generated together with UNICEF. And then finally on what is it that we can do to strengthen coherence between agriculture and social protection. So we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so as Alfredo was explaining in his introductory slides, the majority of the poor live in rural areas and they depend on agriculture. And as a few of you have noted in the tweets you sent, these people are lacking access to financial resources, to appropriate technologies. They have very limited access to natural resources, to markets. They have low levels of education. So as you can see in these bubbles in the drawing, and there's also they're really depending on very basic agricultural technologies. And agriculture definitely has a role to play in addressing some of these constraints. But as I'll be explaining later, we also need social protection interventions. Agriculture has a role to play. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So these farmers are facing risks. It can be risks, as Natalia was saying, associated with health risks or someone in the family dying. Or there can be some covariate shocks, such as droughts, floods, pests and diseases, animal pests and diseases. And these farmers have low risk management capacities. So these shocks have important consequences on their lives, on their livelihoods. And as a consequence of this, they try to reduce the risks that they face, which means that they're often trapped in these low risk, low return activities. So for instance, when the Ministry of Agriculture tries to introduce an agricultural technology that promises to increase the agricultural productivity, these farmers, we may find that they're unable or they're unwilling to take up the technology. It's not because they don't want to increase the agricultural production, but they simply can't afford the risks associated with picking up a technology that they don't know whether it will work or not. And also, as again, a few of you were noting, these farmers lack access to credit, to finance, to labor markets, and their production and their consumption decisions are highly interlinked. So they have to constantly be making trade-offs. For instance, they have to decide whether to invest in their health or whether to invest in buying additional livestock or additional fertilizers to improve the agricultural production. Or they have to decide whether to spend money in sending the child to school or whether the child should work on the family farm. Or they have to make a decision between producing cash crops or producing stable crops for their own production. So they're constantly making these trade-offs, which limit their ability to improve the agricultural production. And as I was saying earlier, agriculture definitely has a role to play, for instance, in improving access to modern technologies or to modern agricultural inputs or increasing access to natural resources. But also social protection has a fundamental role to play. Because social protection can help manage the risks that farmers face, and interventions such as cash transfers can relieve some of the liquidity constraints. And now passing on to some of the evidence. So as Natalia and Ben were saying in the video you've just been through, we have found that cash transfer programs have productive impacts. This is something slightly new. I saw that from the drawings that the images that most of you brought up, you're referring to the protective role of social protection. But something important is also the productive role or the promotive role of social protection. So social protection, the evidence we've generated together with UNICEF in 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, show that social protection leads to improvements in human capital by improving health, improving education, and this leads to an increase in labor productivity and employability. And this is extremely important in the context of structural transformation, where there's a move towards higher labor productivity in agriculture, and also for enabling people to move out of the agricultural sector and into other sectors. We've also found that households that receive the cash transfers increase investments in their agricultural activities as well as their off-farm activities. So for instance, in Zambia, households receiving the cash transfer increase the land area under production by 36%, and increase the agricultural production by 37%. Also, we found in Kenya, for instance, there was a case where a group of ladies got together and bought motorcycles, which they rented out to some drivers, and the drivers were then paying them for the rental of the motorcycle. So they also use the cash transfers to set up some off-farm activities. We've also found that there's a reduction in the use of negative coping strategies, such as selling off assets or withdrawing children from school or reducing the number of meals, as Natalia was saying earlier. And something extremely important is that these cash transfers do not create a disincentive to work. They're not inducing laziness, quite the opposite. They're actually encouraging economic activity. People are becoming more productive when they receive these cash transfers. And this is extremely important, an extremely important finding, because there's a lot of concern among decision makers at the national level, also among development partners, that giving people free cash is going to induce laziness. But the evidence shows that's not true. It's actually the opposite. And now the next slide, please. We look at some of the impacts also at the community level and in the local economy. So social protection interventions like public works can create community infrastructures that benefit agricultural production. For instance, reforestation programs, reforestation that takes place through public works programs, or the construction of irrigation canals, water harvesting tanks. All of these are the types of community assets that can be created through public works programs that benefit agricultural production and natural resource management. And also we found that beneficiaries of cash transfer programs re-engage in social networks that they're usually excluded from. They're excluded from these because they can't contribute to the social networks, but thanks to the cash transfers, they're able to re-engage in them. And at the same time, the social protection programs reduce the burden that these social networks are under. So in sub-Saharan Africa, these informal social networks have been under a lot of strain with the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and social protection programs have helped relieve the burden on these social networks. And then, as you saw in the video, the programs also have an impact on the local economy. Because if I'm a beneficiary of a social protection intervention, I'll spend part of that cash on buying food and services in the local economy. And that generates economic activity that benefits not only the beneficiaries, that brings benefits not only to the direct beneficiaries of the programs, but also to non-beneficiaries. And this finding has been extremely important in mobilizing political commitment to invest in these programs, especially among the ministries of finance. So now we'll ask you to reflect on some of these through the tweets. Over to you.
Exactly. Thanks, Marco. Yeah, it is going to be about tweets. Chiara's going to take you through this exercise.
Yes, I'm taking you to this exercise, and that will see you interacting and being personally involved and having a say around all the topics that Marcus just anticipated. So now we're going to do a 10-minute exercise that will rely upon your intention to speak either verbally or with the chat, and you will be divided into 2 breakout rooms. That means that in 1 minute I will ask Erika to start the breakout rooms, and you will be put in another environment, we could say, in which you are divided into 2 groups for to facilitate, let's say, the verbal exchange or the chat reading. Once there, I will be with one group, Penelope will be with another group. You will receive via chat, so look at your chat, a unique short tweet in the chat, which will relate, they are all different, but they relate to the relationship between agriculture and social protection. Nothing's wrong, nothing's right. It's really, it just let emerge all the diversity that Marco has just shown, and all the multifactorial interaction that you have within the social protection team. So after 10 minutes, we will come back into this room, this plenary, and we will want to hear from each group which are, according to you, the 3 sentences that most appropriately capture why we need coherence between agriculture and social protection. So the best thing is to allocate a leader to share back in plenary the 3 that you have chosen and why. So In 10 seconds, I'm asking Erika to start the breakout room so we can start, discuss, or write about each tweet that you will receive. Okay, Erika, we can go. All right, here we are, back in plenary. After very short, we understand, however, very interactive sessions of discussion. And I have in my group Tommaso, who has collected some of the tweets that have got to the groups and that caused some interaction and reflection. And then I would like also to hear from the group that was facilitated by Penelope. And then I will hand it back to Marco. So we are really keen to hear what you discussed about and your list that got to you and any integration comments. So
hello, shall I go?
With Tommaso? Oh, sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. We had, I must say, a bit of a choppy conversation and tweeting interaction. However, contents was good and spanned from resilience response to more long-term considerations. Resilience, for example, in stressing the need to maintain income stability and therefore avoid income fluctuation in order to confront the episodes that might affect the capacity of households to cope with crisis moments. Similar, well, on the other side of the coin, or let's say on a longer term perspective, there was a mention on the opportunity for social protection to provide an improved human capital and therefore through time have better labor productivity and also employability, and hence building the capacity of the individuals and through time cope with adverse occurrences. This is also connected to a spillover effect and multiplier effect that goes with the increase on and off-farm investment. Therefore, in the wider community, there is the opportunity for social protection to create employability of and around the farm. There is a mention on the remaining, I would say, enabling environment. When it comes to agriculture, we often notice that indeed social protection does not create dependency. However, only social protection is connected to situation of very high rates of poverty and high rates of undernourishment. The reason for that is because the remaining part, the enabling environment, is not fostering any livelihood developmental approach. So maybe we remain only on the response to humanitarian problems, and therefore the need to have complementing developmental approach, and the social protection can represent the bridge between the humanitarian and the developmental side. There was another intervention that I wanted to mention. However, I failed to note it down. If my colleague wants to complement it directly himself, please.
Yes, it was from maybe right. If you want to integrate on what Tommaso has just said, we would be happy to hear. Otherwise, we will hear from Penelope's group and then integrate that later on.
Would anybody like to share? We can actually allocate these in the end. For me, the big themes were sustainability and integration. There's just not one approach. But anybody like to elaborate on that? Okay, Chiara, we'll just move on in terms of Marco just summing, sure, taking what he's heard and summing up around, and then looking at the response to that. So we've gone through the theoretical with the evidence. We've had a chat, and it's about what can we do going forward. Thanks, Marco.
Yeah, Penelope, I can't hear you very well. Can you repeat, please?
Oh, just in terms of you summing up in terms of how can we bring together agriculture and social protection and the response to that.
Yes. Okay, so now both from what based on what I presented and what you presented back, we see that social protection has a role to play in improving agricultural production, but let's not lose sight of the complementary role that agriculture has to play, because households can be investing more, let's say, in their agricultural activities, but unless they have access to the technologies or to the advisory services that can provide them information on what are the most productive investments, then you're not getting the synergies that we could get. Yeah, so we need both agriculture and social protection. So now going on to what is it that we can do, a little bit more on the practicalities. And I'll start off first with the programming, and then I'll look at the enabling environment. So in terms of the programming, we've identified three main different options. One of them is to adapt the design of single programs, so adapting the design of an agricultural program so that it can better reach poor smallholder farmers. This, for instance, can be adapting the design, the targeting strategy of an agricultural program. I'll make reference to the case of Zambia, for instance, where there is an input subsidy program that is financed through a pro-poor budget. One of the selection criteria for farmers to take part is that they should own something around 20 goats and be part of a cooperative. So although the program is labeled as being a poverty reduction program, its targeting mechanisms end up excluding the poor, because there aren't poor households with 20 goats, or poor households that can afford the costs of being a member of a cooperative. Okay, so these are some of the tweaks that can be made to an agricultural program so that it better reaches the poor. We can also adapt the design of a social protection intervention so that it has greater impacts on agricultural production without losing sight of the primary objectives of these interventions, which are social objectives. But for instance, we could increase the size of the cash transfer so that households can both meet their basic needs and have sufficient income available to invest in the agricultural activities. In fact, in terms of the impact evaluations we've carried out, we found that there are greater impacts where the size of the cash transfers is larger. Another option is to combine interventions into a single program. So to combine agricultural and social protection interventions into one program. We have the case in Ethiopia where there is the food security program that includes a public works intervention that is complemented by an agricultural intervention that provides access to credit and to agricultural extension services. So households that participate in the public works also receive support from this agricultural intervention. And another option, as we can see, for instance, in Peru, is where you have separate programs. Like in the case of Peru, there's a conditional cash transfer program. And then there is a separate agricultural program that is coordinated and reaches the same beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries of the cash transfer program also receive agricultural support through a separate program. Or you have the case in Zambia at the moment where there is a homegrown school feeding intervention, so that's a social protection intervention. And the farmers that supply the school feeding program also receive production support through an FAO conservation agriculture program. So this is an example of how different sectors, different sectoral interventions can come together, either in standalone programs, into a single program, or in separate programs that are coordinated among each other. But to achieve this, sorry, can you just go back to the previous slide a moment? To achieve this, we found that there are some important constraints. Since the Ministries of Agriculture and the Ministries of Social Protection, they share similar goals in terms of wanting to reduce poverty and hunger, but they have very different strategic approaches. So the Ministries of Agriculture focus mainly on commercial farmers because they see themselves as being economic ministries, and they prefer to link up with what they perceive as other economic ministries, such as the ministries of trade. The ministries of social protection have these social goals, and they are mainly focusing on the poor and the vulnerable, and they tend to link up with other social ministries, such as education and health. The coordination mechanisms, they have separate coordination mechanisms, so you don't see agriculture participating in the coordination mechanisms for social protection, and vice versa. And especially within the ministries of agriculture, there's the assumption that the poor cannot be productive. This is changing, also partly this is changing in the ministries responsible for social protection programs, also thanks to the evidence that we've generated. But there is, but still within the Ministry of Agriculture, there's this strong assumption that poor cannot be productive. So in order to be able to work on these different programming avenues, it's important to work on the enabling environment. Next slide, please. And here we've identified 5 main entry points. One of these is to mobilize political commitment for coherence between agriculture and social protection. FAO works a lot on this, mainly by generating evidence on what is the added value of bringing together agricultural and social protection interventions, and then using this evidence in different fora, for instance, with parliamentarians in the case of Rwanda, or with bringing civil society together to discuss the benefits of this, working with high-level managers in ministries, and also working at the technical level. We can also be influencing the design of these framework policies, such as we're doing in Malawi with the National Agricultural Investment Plan. So making sure that this National Agricultural Investment Plan or food security frameworks recognize the role that agriculture and social protection together can play in improving resilience, reducing poverty, improving food security and nutrition. We can also strengthen coordination mechanisms to ensure that agriculture is represented in the coordination for social protection and vice versa. We're doing that at the moment, mainly by working with the coordination mechanisms of development partners. So we're starting to improve the coordination mechanisms of the development partners, and after that, moving on, that's going to be the channel through which to improve the coordination mechanisms of governments. And also another opportunity is to improve human capacities, improve the understanding within the ministries of agriculture, ministries of social development, ministries of development planning or finance, improving the understanding of what is the relevance of bringing together agriculture and social protection and how to do that. And this is an example of a training event of that kind.
Great. I'll actually put it in, Marco, and put it all together in terms of a focus of a case study of Brazil, and Flavia and Fabio are going to talk through that. Over to you.
Hello again. Just one second. Yeah, so now we want to finalize this first webinar with a concrete case, which is the example of Brazil, and we have with us Fabio, and I will let Fabio introduce himself to the participants. Okay. Fabio? Okay,
Thank
there
you,
you go.
Flavia. Hello. Thank you,
Hello.
Flavia. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Fabio Veras. I'm a researcher at the International Policy Center for Inclusive Growth, but originally from the Institute for Applied Economic Research from the Brazilian government.
So Fabio, would like to make you some questions and then about the Brazilian program, and then we can open for questions and answers from the participants. Let's start with asking you if you can briefly give us an overview of how has Brazil managed to eradicate hunger, because it was quite of broadcasted everywhere, how Brazil greatly decreased the hunger, or actually the extreme poverty was eliminated in the 10 years of the Brazil Zero Hunger strategy. So I wanted to just first for you to give us an overview of how has Brazil managed to do that, to eradicate.
Okay, thank you, Flavia. First of all, I would like to resonate a little bit what Benjamin Davis said in the video that we watched. The process of eradicating poverty, reducing poverty, eradicating hunger is a long process. It's not something that you do in 2, 3, or 4 years. I will use the Brazilian experience of the Brazilian case study for us to reflect a little bit on how Brazil managed to do it, how was this process, and how some of the things that FAO intends to contribute in the field of social protection was tackled in the Brazilian case. I think that the first thing I would like to highlight is that the social protection and the combination between social protection and agricultural intervention, so the implementation of this type of programs, did not start with the Zero Hunger strategy. So the novelty around the Zero Hunger strategy was basically to try to bring together these programs and reinforce its coherence and its coordination. That was basically the value added of the Zero Hunger strategy. Something that was quite important in Brazil, and it's important to say that, is the fact that the social protection, the social assistance, the old age pension started being implemented in Brazil in the early 1970s. So it's a process that starts a long time ago, but it started in a manner that was quite timid, in a way that only the head of the household could actually be eligible for the old age pension, for the non-contributory one. The women would only be eligible if the woman was not married. It was only with the democratization process that the women became eligible, and actually that this old age pension became a much more sizable benefit for the households. But we know from previous evaluations, for example, that this injection of cash in the rural sector in Brazil was quite important to make the local economies much more dynamic. So even before of the Bolsa Família, the famous CCT program in Brazil, we already had some sort of income guarantee and some sort of social assistance and cash transfer programs for the rural areas. So that resonates actually the pillar of action number 2, and Brazil would be a good case to look at in terms of how the coverage of social protection has been expanded, first with the social pensions, but then lately with the conditional cash transfer programs. The other aspect that I would like to highlight is that the Hunger Zero strategy, it has a flavor of continuity, in the sense that it takes these programs that Brazil has had for a long time, they reform some of these programs and also generate new programs. And some of these new programs were generated as part of the social movement of the family farmers that during the 90s, during the democratization process, put forward a strong agenda on what could be done in terms of agricultural interventions to support family farmers, especially poor family farmers. One aspect that's quite important in this process was actually the formation or the inauguration of the National Food and Nutrition Security Council that was very much engaged in the discussion of both of social protection policies, but also of agricultural interventions. So just to summarize, in terms of the contribution of the Hunger Zero, I believe that it was the pillar of action number 3. It was pretty much bringing more coordination and more coherence to the policy. That was its huge contribution to the reduction or to the eradication of hunger in the case of Brazil.
Thank you very much, Fab. And since you're mentioning very well-known programs as Bolsa Família, and then you just overemphasize the Pillar 3 income generation, do you think you can tell us a little bit about the main programs, including Bolsa Família, but also the others that I think you mentioned a little bit in a bit more? And also, what if you could explain the other pillars that are part of this comprehensive strategy of zero hunger in Brazil?
Okay. So I mentioned actually Bolsa Família, it's the largest in terms of coverage, and it's also the largest in terms of the budget. It's 0.5% of the GDP. So it's not a huge budget, but it's among all the programs within the Hunger Zero strategy, it was the biggest one. The second one was actually a rural credit program. That's not social protection. It's basically more related to support to agriculture. And the third one was the school feeding program. One thing that's quite interesting to look at is that the three largest programs within the Zero Hunger strategy were managed by different ministries. So we had the Ministry of Social Development for Bolsa Familia. We had the Ministry of Agrarian Development for the rural credit for the PRONAF that also has a component of crop insurance, for example. And we also had the third program, the school feeding program that's managed by the Ministry of Education. So this highlights when you have a strategy like that, you need to have some sort of coordination mechanism across different ministries and sometimes within ministries to make sure that the programs are delivering what they are supposed to do. In terms of the pillars, the Hunger Zero strategy, they had 4 pillars. So the first pillar was the food access. And basically within the food access, we have programs to guarantee resource, to have access to be able to purchase food. And that was the importance of the Bolsa Familia program, of the conditional cash transfer program. But we also have programs that facilitate the direct access to food. So in that case, we have the largest one is the school feeding program, but also we had popular restaurants, community kitchens, food banks, and other related interventions such as nutrition education, and also the food and nutrition surveillance system to monitor food and nutrition security within the country that's managed by the Ministry of Health. And the third component that was quite important as well was access to water. And here is access to water both for human consumption, to guarantee, especially in the northeast of Brazil where we have droughts, to guarantee that people have drinkable water. But also there was a second component that was more related to income generation and to the production that should also guarantee water for vegetable gardens and to small animals. That was quite important. The second and the third components of the pillars of the Hunger Zero strategy are more related to production. They are divided into 2 fields. One is the strengthening of family agriculture. And here we have what I already mentioned, the rural credit and crop insurance, the PRONAF program that actually started in the 1990s and was reformed with the Hunger Zero strategy to amplify not only its budget but also its coverage. And the food acquisition program, that was an innovation that was brought about by the Hunger Zero strategy. And basically is the institutional demands or the structural demands that comes with the Hunger Zero strategy, in which the government purchases directly from smallholder farmers, either for its own stocks to regulate the prices and to manage the stocks in the countries of food, but also to distribute to the population in need of food assistance. So that was one of the first programs that integrated this access to markets via purchase from the government and also to food assistance. That is one of the pillars of social assistance as well. The third component, income generation, here we have a focus that's not only on agriculture, it can also be in non-farm income, for example, and then you have a component of training, apprenticeship, the whole strategies for productive inclusion, giving access to rural extension and to rural and social development strategies. So that brings together more a focus on making the rural households more productive, not only in farms, but also in non-farm activities. And finally, there is the fourth pillar that's related to mobilization of the civil society and social accountability. So the idea here is actually to bring together farmers' organizations, the organizations of civil society to inform the policy and to help to monitor and evaluate the policies. Over to
Thank you very much, Fabio. I think because we are short in time, I'm going to pass to Penelope for the feedback and a final wrap-up of this session.
Thanks, Flavia and Fabio. And I think the participants, if you've got any burning questions, put them on the chat and we can wrap them up. We can get Fabio to respond via the e-journal, so we can collate your questions And so please do. So yeah, we've gone through the welcome, the presentation. You're clear about why you're here, why it's important you're here, and the learning journey. You're getting to a little bit to know each other, and you've got a good, more nuanced, hopefully, appreciation of social protection and the components of that, and also in terms of a real illustrative example of Brazil. So we are at the final end where we're going to wrap up and say to you that the next webinar session will be on 12th of July. You'll be into two groups. There'll be a choice between a morning and afternoon session. And you'll be looking at the challenges and best practices of social protection in the NENA region. So we really want you to ask and think about what are the challenges and best practices in your area. So we will ask you to do that. We invite you to read the first issue of the e-journal. It will be emailed to you separately. It will take about 15 minutes to read, I guess. We'll just capture that. We'll email it to you and put it on the socialprotection.org. We've also asked you to reflect. What have you learned, and what are the lessons for you in your role? It's really important, as Chiara illustrated, in terms of that reflective part of the learning process. Think about the challenges for webinar 2, and do send in your photo if you haven't already. We'd like to see your face and really establish the network. Use the publications. There's lots of material out there, and particularly FAO has produced, but that's also why we're using the socialprotection.org platform, because there's so many resources available to you. And I'll hand over to Chiara just to explain the feedback process that we're asking you to do.
Yes, we're asking you after each webinar to tell us your honest feedback through an online survey that will take you no more than 3, maximum 5 minutes. And it's really precious for us because it helps us improving as we go, but also knowing you and your perceptions a little bit more in case you did not have the chance to interact. So Erika will now show you the link in the chat. That means that you can go in, look at the chat box and click into this SurveyMonkey platform that will make you enter this very, very fast questionnaire that will ask you about what you are taking away from this experience. So thank you a lot for your effort and presence and interaction, which was really, really high for a first webinar. We ask you really, really warmly to give us your feedback through the survey, and we look forward to seeing you in the next step.
Absolutely, and my sentiments exactly, Chiara. And we will stay online and capture any of your additional comments that you want to leave in chat, and we'll, whether they be questions for Natalia, Marco, Flavia, Fabio, Alfredo, or the rest of you. So we'll keep it open, but we really warmly thank you for your participation and turning up. It's very important to turn up. It's 80% of success is turning up, as Woody Allen said. So we'll see you on the 12th of July, but we'll be communicating in between there. Thank you so much, and yeah, goodbye from me. I'm still here.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care. See you on the 12th of July.